What's up everybody, another beautiful day on the Dragonflight beta, and we're back with some more raid guides and previews, and today we're taking a look at Heroic the Primal Council in the new raid Vault of the Incarnates. Now this is beta testing, so a lot of things can change, be added, or well scrapped altogether. So, the Primal Council, shockingly a council style fight. 4 bosses, each with their own element, as well as abilities and on-death abilities correlating with these elements, and lucky for us, each of the bosses have abilities that helps us counter the other boss's abilities. Very nice of them. A very well-designed council, I must say. Regardless, we have Kadros Ice Wrath. Basically, doesn't need to be tanked, hits like a moist noodle at best, but does need to be interrupted whenever they cast Frost Spike. Targets a rando player, deals a chunk of damage, and yeah, that's it. Just interrupt. And at 100 energy, Kadros starts channeling Primal Blizzard over 10 seconds, during which everyone in the raid takes a ton of frost damage every 1 second, and increases frost damage taken by 10%, and reduces fire damage taken by 15% per stack. However, at 10 stacks you become a popsicle. This also pulls you slowly in towards Kadros during this channel, potentially spreading other mechanics if you aren't careful. And Scorching Ground removes the Blizzard debuff and depopsiclify popsicles. And this Scorching Ground is made by Embar Firepath with his Meteor Axis. Embar targets 2 players with a 10-yard fiery circle. After a few seconds, this deals lethal damage split between all targets, and increases damage taken by subsequent Meteor Axis. You can't stack these two up. And on top of this, upon expiration, you spawn Scorched Ground, which deals a ton of damage if you cuddle in it. And this axe also shatters any earthen pillars that are up. Now on top of this, Embar will also use Slashing Blaze. At 100 energy, Frontal Cone smacks the tank, dealing a big chunk of fire damage and leaves a nasty dot that lasts for 15 seconds. And this stacks, so eventually tanks will need to swap on this one. Then we have Dethea Stormlash, which is Dethea Ascended, another boss in the same raid. Uses some of those abilities here as well. I guess Blizzard really liked those mechanics. Usually they wait at least 1 or 2 tiers before they reuse them. Yeah, well, Lightning Bolt, interruptible cast, smacks rando player. Otherwise there's Chain Lightning. Unsure how this is intended to work. At the moment it just hit literally everyone, so it did not require spreading. You just took it to the face. Conductive Mark, however, does require spreading. Targets like a third of the raid with a 5-yard circle, deals a chunk of damage on application and then ticking damage. Also increases nature damage taken by 10% per stack. Now, more importantly, if a unmarked player moves into a marked player circle, they get marked as well, so it duplicates. It also refreshes the OG circle's debuff timer, and if 2 marked players cuddle, they get increased nature damage taken stacks instead, and also refreshes. So this is one of those legendary spread mechanics. Now you can also remove Conductive Mark by grounding them into an earthen pillar, which Opal Fang helps supply. Very thoughtful. So these earthen pillars targets 4 random players or player locations. After a bit, a pillar emerges, dealing damage and knocking players away. And then they stand there, tall, proud, rigid. And if players with Conductive Mark moves within 5 yards of a pillar, it gets removed. Very handy. Now on top of this, the aforementioned Meteor Axis, like I said, they remove earthen pillars, so if you place the big circle on top of the smaller pillars, they go bye-bye, which you'll need to not run out of space. Opal Fang will also crush her current target, dealing a big chunk of physical damage and increase physical damage taken by 100%. This also stacks, so again, do the tank swap thingy. Now on top of this, all of these bosses have an on-death mechanic. Kadros Ice Wrath, Glacial Convocation, which is a constant Primal Blizzard, if you will, ticking frost damage, which increases frost damage taken and can be removed by Scorching Ground. Dethea Storming Convocation summons a bunch of tornadoes at several players' location. Hugging one of these hurts you and knocks you back. Opal Fang Quaking Convocation periodically rips the earth beneath random players, dealing damage and interrupts spellcast for 4 seconds. And Firepath Burning Convocation, casting fiery volleys every 4 seconds, deals a large amount of damage on impact and leaves a dot. And all of these abilities are in effect effect from the moment the corresponding boss dies and until the fight is over, or you die, which means the fight is over. So might be a case where you, for example, nuke down the Thea fast to get rid of the conductive marks, which allows you to then nuke down Opalfang to remove more earthen pillars from spawning, which then leads you to nuke down Embar to remove the axis, and finally you burst down Kadros. Or you just form a perfect strat around having all the boss abilities at the same time and you cleave them down evenly. I mean, that might actually be the case, but probably not. Regardless, while all the bosses are up, you will need to deal with all of them and their abilities. And what we tried while testing, when the lag allowed it, was to do the old bait and move.
Cue the picture!
We stacked up the raid and bosses on the outer edge of the room. When pillars spawn, you move away from them. Spread for conductive marks. Marks then runs to pillars to get rid of them faster rather than waiting for 15 seconds. Then the very next meteor axe smacks on top of those pillars. Split the raid between these and then tank bosses near the scorched ground to allow melee to dip into the scorched ground when Kadros uses Blizzard. Then you spawn new earthen pillars near the old scorched ground and rinse repeat. Spawn, move, spawn, move. The scorched ground despawns after around 2 minutes, so you'd never run out of space like this. Now there might be a Pepega approach to this where you bait 4 pillars in the middle of the room and assign each player except the tanks a spot around these pillars, and as soon as conductive marks is about to go out, everyone goes to their pillar location and raid insta cleanses all marks as soon as they pop up, and then proceeds with the fight by dropping new pillars along the outer edge as mentioned earlier. And of course you'd never axe the pillars in the middle as you'd need them for the marks. Now this is highly unlikely to work since you gotta manage to bait the pillars in the middle like this, or similar to this, but if one figures that part out, might be a thing for Mythic as you can only remove marks by using earthen pillars there. They do not time out. All in all, this shapes up to be a decent fight. Tons of things to do, lots of coordination, and tons of pad. Think of the pad! And yeah, that's pretty much it for the Primal Council on Heroic. If they make major changes to the fight and we get to test it again, I'll revisit this video. Otherwise, I'll drop an updated guide once the raid goes live. Let me know in the comments what you think about the fight. Don't forget the usual stuff, like, comment, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. I stream progression and testing on Twitch Thursdays and Sundays, and whenever there's raid testing. Make sure to check out my Patreon if you want to help support me, my work, and my goal of upgrading my computer before Dragonflight. Also gives you access to the Stankie Discord where you can get help with anything raiding related. It's also the fastest way to get a hold of me, and there's a ton of awesome people to help you out with all of your progression needs. Speaking of awesome people, make sure to check out the Liquid Women in Warcraft Discord for a supportive and safe Warcraft community. I'll leave a link to this in the descriptions below. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time.